Will I be able to film this video, or are we just gonna get a speech from Bilbo? Say hi, Boo-Boo! Hi, Boo-Boo! Ideally, I would have had this video up sooner, but it is time for my holiday book gift giving guide. I made one of these last year as well. If you'd like to see it, I'll have an annotation right here that you can click, or if you're on mobile, there will be a link in the description box. Last year I did it based on ages, so like books for kids, books for teens, books for adults, blah blah blah. There's probably more age groups than that. This year I'll be recommending based on genre, so I'm going to be recommending 2 books per genre. Of course, nobody is surprised that my first recommendation is Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and drawn by Fiona Staples. This is the first trade paperback collection, but they did just release a hardcover of a whole bunch of collected comics, and it's very nice. Again, mature content warning, swearing, blood, violence, gore, sex, inappropriateness, but this is my all-time favorite comic. This is phenomenal. The art is absolutely stunning. Most people describe this as Romeo and Juliet meets Star Wars, which I see where they're coming from, but like not quite. It's a sci-fi, fantasy, adventure story. There are different races of people, and the main 2 are in a giant war against each other. They have been for ages, and it's the people with the horns and people with wings. And then Marco and Alana are the 2 main characters. They are both from opposite ends, they fall in love, blah blah blah. You know this story, but then they have a baby, and their baby has wings and horns, and they're running because they were in the military, and now they are enemies of the state, and they want to kill them and their baby, and they are escaping from that and going on an adventure. The book I recommend is Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh. I have 2 copies here because I'm going to be giving this out to people myself, because it is by far the funniest book I have read in my entire life. When I read this, I borrowed it, so if somebody wants to get this for me for Christmas, I'm all for it. This book is a mixture of paragraphs of text along with little comics. This is adapted from a webcomic. You may know it from the All the Things meme. That was this. This has some exclusive content that's only in here though. So these are all awkward and hilarious situations from Ali Brosh's life told through hyperbole, which is basically like exaggeration. Seriously, I was in tears, crying, laughing the entire time I read this book. Like, legitimately. Everyone that I have made read this has also loved it and found it extremely hilarious. Like, if you want a sample, I will link to the original webcomic down there where you can read some of the comics, some of which are in here. So this manga is about alchemy, and it's kind of like magic in here, but it follows the 2 Elric brothers, Edward and Alphonse. Their mother dies when they're very young, and they try to use alchemy to bring her back to life. Now, alchemy uses the law of equivalent exchange, meaning to get something you need to give something of equal value to get it. So when they try to bring their mother back, it ends up that Alphonse loses his soul and body and Edward loses his arm. Then Edward is like, yo, I want my... No, does he lose his leg? I think he loses his leg. But then Edward's like, Alphonse is all I have left, so he tries to get his brother's soul back, and he binds it into a suit of armor, and in exchange loses his arm. So now he only has 1 arm and 1 leg, and his brother is a suit of armor, and this is their journey to get their original bodies back, and it is flawless. The characters are the best part, in my opinion. The characters are so fully developed, you're rooting for them all. They are so realistic. Then the plot, the character growth, the world building, everything is literally flawless. Highly, highly recommend. And the bad guys in this, coolest bad guys ever. I don't want to spoil things, but they are freaking awesome. Plus, in the back, they have these 4-panel comics that are like funnies, and they always have me cracking up, and I adore them. There are 27 volumes in total of this. The second manga I recommend is the first one that I ever read. I do not want to get it down because it's way up high on a shelf in a box, so don't have the physical copy with me, but it looks like this, and you've probably heard of it. It is quite popular, and I think it's pretty accessible for a manga. It's quite dark. There's a lot of death in it, obviously. So this story follows Light Yagami. He is like the perfect student. He's so smart. His dad is a police officer. He's like the perfect kid and he's going great places. And then he finds the Death Note, which is a notebook, and when you write someone's name in it, they die of a heart attack. There's lots of rules for how to use the Death Note, but that's the basic concept. You write somebody's name, they die. There's no evidence. And along with the notebook comes a Shinigami, which is a death god, and, blah blah blah. It's kind of complicated. It's not your typical manga in that there is tons and tons of dialogue. Speech bubbles are huge, especially towards the end. It's very much a mind game instead of like a physical fighting, which most manga are action, at least the ones I read. I love the mind game aspects. It's so clever. Like, sometimes you're like, really? Are you sure about that? But I love L. Like, when I was a teenager, I wanted to marry L. Like, what teenager who loves anime didn't want to marry L, I suppose? But highly recommend this series as well. I believe Death Note has 12 volumes in total. Could be wrong. There's a couple spin-offs as well. There's movies, an anime, a live action. There's a lot of Death Note stuff out there. My first recommendation is a book that I always recommend for selfish reasons, and that is Dragon Sword and Wind Child by Noriko Agawara and translated by Kathy Hirano. There are 3 books in this series. They're not related to each other, they're just set in the same world, so this stands alone, the second one stands alone, the third one stands alone. But the third one is not translated into English, and I really want to read it so badly, so everyone should buy this book so they're like, oh, there's so much interest in it, we should translate the third book. I picked this up on a whim a while ago in an anime store. And I completely fell in love with it. This is the most original book I have ever read. It is so beautiful and amazing. I could not put it down. So this is about the world of Toyo Ashihara, which is basically ancient Japan. And there's the darkness and the light, a very old struggle, obviously. And it's about this girl named Saya, and she is raised to love the light, but then she finds out she's a water maiden and a princess of the children of darkness, and she's like, it sounds kind of typical, right? But it takes all the cliches, all the tropes, and just does a complete 180 and blows your mind. It is written so lovely, the world building is amazing, the characters are awesome. This is a pretty gorgeous cover as well, but oh my god, this is one of my all-time favorite books. It is flawless. Please give this a chance. It will not disappoint you. Well, I suppose some people won't like it, but I think that most people will love it. It is so good. The second fantasy is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. How could I leave out my favorite author? This is about a guy named Richard Mayhew. Him and his girlfriend are walking along the streets of London, and he sees this girl laying bleeding and dying on the street, and nobody else seems to see her, and he helps her and inadvertently finds London Below, which is people living in the shadows and the underground subways, and they're kind of like magical and stuff. And he ends up in this world helping the girl, running from bad guys, trying to get back to the real London, and it is fabulous. It's one of those things where you read it and then you're like, how could anybody come up with a concept this clever? Neil Gaiman's imagination is the place that I want to go to. Does that make sense? Like, this book is amazing. It is so well written. My first recommendation is Mort by Terry Pratchett, or anything in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. I haven't read them all. There's over 40 of them, but I have not been disappointed. They can be read out in any order, but Mort is one of my all-time favorites that I've read. This is about a boy named Mortimer, or Mort for short. He tries hard, but he is clumsy, he messes up everything, and his dad's like, I don't want him to take over the family business, he'll ruin everything, let's find him an apprenticeship. He goes to the place where everyone is finding apprenticeships, nobody will take him, and then at the stroke of midnight, death appears before him and takes him to be his apprentice. So, very interesting premise, but add that to the fact that Terry Pratchett is a comedic genius. He's got dry, sarcastic wit, very typical British humor, I would say, and every throwaway detail, like street names that you never hear again, he makes into like a clever pun or something. He's brilliant, This is a hilarious book. I love Death. I love Mort. I love all these characters. They're hilarious. You love them. What else could I recommend to you other than The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams? This is a really nice paperback bind-up. It's got The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, Life, the Universe, and Everything, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and Mostly Harmless. It is very hilarious, obviously. There's not much of a connected plot, really, but it is great. You probably already know what it's about. If you haven't read it, you should go for it. It's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What else can I say? It's hilarious. First recommendation is It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. I am very, very particular about my contemporary. I like them to be brutally realistic or absurdly unrealistic to where it's funny, but mostly brutally realistic and honest, and that is what this is. This is about a boy named Craig who really wants to succeed. He wants to study, get good grades, go to a good college, get a good job, and he's about to take his college entrance exams when he gets really, really depressed and overwhelmed. He wants to kill himself, so he checks himself into a mental hospital, and he learns about life and himself and others, and it is got some of the best quotes ever. This book is just phenomenal, and it's very realistic. Next up is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I don't want to say too much about this book because the mysterious aspects are what make it so great. But basically, there's a girl, something happens, she loses tons of her memory, and she starts getting horrible headaches. You have to figure out what happened to her. I love the writing in this. A lot of people didn't like it, but I loved it. And I loved how mysterious it was. The atmosphere was awesome. You were on the edge of your seat, and you just kept guessing, and I loved the final reveal, and I just really, really loved this book. Probably not the right person to talk about this, but let's try. My first recommendation is Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. Obviously, I am not a fan of romance, but if Rainbow Rowell writes it, I will read it. I love all of her books. I didn't know which one to pick though, but this was the first one I ever read, so I thought I'd go with this. This is a book about Eleanor and Park. Wow, shock, surprise. But anyways, Eleanor is poor and she's going through a hard time with her stepfather, and then she meets Park on the bus, and at first they don't really like each other, but then eventually he always brings comics on the bus. She's been reading over his shoulder, and he starts lending her comics, and then he starts lending her music, and the relationship develops through that. Rainbow Rowell is the queen of dialogue. The dialogue is so witty and hilarious and wonderful. Her characters are so lovable. You're rooting for them. They also just came out with like a special edition with fan art in the middle, and the fan art is gorgeous, so a nice addition as a gift. So my final recommendation and my second romance is kind of a cop-out, but it is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I absolutely adore this book, but I did not actually like the romance in this book, but I know a lot of people do, so it totally counts. This is another one where I think it's really good to go in blind, but it is about a circus, shock, surprise, again, and magicians, and a contest, and a romance, and it's told in the most beautiful way. The descriptions are intoxicating, the writing is beautiful, the atmosphere just completely draws you in. I could not put this book down. The circus is so cool. I want to go so bad. I think the atmosphere of this book and the circus itself is very romantic, more so than the actual romance, so I'm totally counting it. You should read this book. This book is freaking great. That's all the recommendations I have for this time, but again, I did make one last year if you want to check that out. Still a link down there, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!